Hello and welcome to Mediumship Matters with me, Hannah McIntyre. And I am incredibly excited that the first guest on season 4 of the podcast is the incredible soul that is Rebecca Campbell, a lady who probably needs no introduction, but has written copious books, oracle decks, has got a thriving online community, and of course, her own podcast. Welcome, Rebecca. Thanks for joining us.
Oh, so good to be here, Hannah. Hi, everyone.
It's really, really exciting to have you. This is a big moment for me. I'm trying to behave normally, but when I was developing and your cards first came out, because they have such a different vibration and look and everything about them, they were such a wonderful gift to me for my unfoldment. In fact, I have one of your cards just pinned up there permanently, the bud. Just looking at me, and that's been up there for about 2 years just to remind me it's supposed to be all unfolding.
Yeah.
Let it happen. So I always like to start with how you started, because it seems like the natural place. So how did you get involved in all of this?
Well, I think since I was young, I was always kind of, I want to say like connected to spirit. I think we're all connected to spirit, but like had a longing toward it. And yeah, that was not something that was that was part of my surroundings or how I was raised. So I think often when you have those little signs, like, yeah, I mean, I wish someone told me when I was younger to like pay more attention to
Yeah.
those things that make you different. I know when you're younger, you tend to try and like fit in, but actually those things that make us different and unique tend to be, it's my belief that it kind of shows like the soul gifts and potentially like the life path. So yeah, I'd always been that way inclined. I had a couple of experiences in my teen years. I've not studied mediumship, but I've had experiences, and that was the beginning for me.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I connected with a couple of spirits of children who had passed away. And yeah, it's interesting. I was just in New York with John Holland, who you probably know, who's a
Yes.
medium. And yeah, I've got a lot of medium friends in my life. And I was saying to him, I've been noticing lately that is where my path started. But it's interesting that it's not been like the active path yet. And so, yeah, there's something that I'm very curious about. I think I'm sure like you, it's the path I'm walking now. I mean, maybe my soul chose it, but it hasn't felt like it's been something that I've kind of chosen on a conscious level. I've said yes to it as things come up, but yeah, I'm just very surprised that like, yeah.
Lovely. Because you came from a corporate background, didn't you?
Yeah. So I ended up going, I knew I was very clear that I wanted to inspire people with my creations. That was very clear. I had visions when I was younger about like writing books and, I discovered Hay House and all of that. But I was just like, how can I possibly do that? Like I barely lived a life and all of that. So the mystical arts and intuition and all of that really became a passion and something that I was studying in, but I never saw it as a career.
Yeah.
But I continued on and I ended up having a career, went to university, had a career in advertising as a copywriter and then a creative director. Really enjoyed it. And, obviously in the corporate world, lots of things I didn't like about it. But it wasn't until my late 20s that I just realized, like, well, first of all, I was like, well, I'm pretty much more qualified now in my passion than even my career. And I also knew that it just wasn't part of my path anymore. And that was really difficult for me because I think when I was younger, I knew very clearly that my career was like a big part of my purpose. Like I knew my career was like there was something I came here to do kind of thing.
Mhm.
And yeah, I worked really, really hard at it. And when I look back now, I'm like, oh, I used to pray and walk in nature before going into work, like praying for creative ideas that were gonna like raise the vibration of the planet, as I would have said back then, to come in fully formed. And I do that before going to work, because I just could not work in the office. Like I'd always have to, be in nature, which is where I do a lot of my writing now. Not all of it, but a lot of it. And so, I like coming to terms with the fact that this life that I'd consciously created and all the effort I'd put into it was like not, it doesn't mean it was a waste. I learned so much, which I use now. But the fact that it was like not where I was being called was such a difficult thing for me to accept and loosen my grip around. Yeah.
That's so interesting, because I used to have a cooking business, so
Did
nothing to
you?
do with mediumship at all, very physical. And again, there was the creative stuff of designing everything and everything like
Yeah.
that. But when you get, there's a kind of a weird grieving process, isn't there? Even though
Yeah.
you know it's the right path, you still have to let go of everything you've built in that direction.
So true. Yeah. And I think it's really hard to, like, I think looking back, of course, you realize nothing's ever wasted.
Mhm.
And that I do believe that when it is a call from within, and you do gather the courage and you act consistently, it's not like just like getting guidance and dipping your toe in. You've got to go for it. But in my experience, when you do that, it's like it speeds up way faster than if you had have stayed in the previous.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for
I wish
sure.
I knew that. I would have done that earlier if I had known that.
Yeah, well, I think, but then look at all the, like I said, I've got
Yeah.
your card up on the wall, all of that everything you teach people comes from that process that you've been through,
Oh my God,
helping
so
others
true.
to, yeah.
Yeah. I'm sure
so
you too.
it wasn't all bad, because we're all
Yeah.
learning from it, so that's great.
Yeah.
So was there a moment when you fully committed and went, no, I'm choosing a new path, or did it sort of come in creeping bit by bit?
That's such a good question. I mean, it creeped for a very long time, but um there's definitely a couple of moments where I think it was almost like, committing 30% and then committing 60% and then committing 100%. And there were, when my friend Blair passed away, I didn't know he'd passed away. I knew he was sick. He was in a coma, and I got on the plane and he died. I felt his passing. I knew he had passed. Like I felt his body like on me while I was on the plane. I knew he'd passed, like the exact moment. And him and I had always said, we went to university together, actually. He was an actor. Both of us were really creative. And we had this plan to, he was like my spiritual friend. Kind of was
Yeah.
a bit undercover, but he was my spiritual friend. And we said that we'd like make it in our careers and then we'd write a book together. And there was something about him leaving that made me commit fully. And interestingly, I ended up, when I was back, I ended up staying back in Australia because I was based in London when I heard the news. And we organized his funeral, and I spoke at his funeral. I read some of his writing, and myself and some of our friends went and saw a medium, and he came through. And in the and oh my gosh, it was like such his personality. Like it was very like how do you describe it? He just thought he was fabulous and everyone was fabulous. And she brought him in so accurately. And in it, she was like, she went for me. And and one of the things she said is like, he said, you need to write the book. Like, you need to write the book. So that was definitely a moment. And then straight after, actually, it was so funny. His personality came through, and it was as if he was like comparing himself to the other spirits, and he was like, "Beat that!" As in, like, he performed so well. It was so good. Yeah. So that was definitely a moment. And then there were two others. One was there was a big. I was listening to he's now a friend of mine, Guru Nam Singh. He was chanting, and there was this song, I think it was called The Grace of God. Oh no, Unto Thee was like, give up all your hopes and your dreams, your plans and your schemes. So basically, like, stop trying so hard and surrender to Thee, God, Goddess, whatever you believe.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just the right moment. And I did. And I think soon after, it was like the relationship ended, you know, a whole lot of things. And that was actually before Blair died. And then the final piece was really me committing to the work, like in a like a really practical way. And that that consisted essentially of me, seems so basic, but it was the thing that changed everything. Showing up to a daily spiritual practice and then acting on the guidance that came in a very small baby step, which is like the core of what I teach now.
Yeah.
And so every day listening to intuition, every day acting on it in a tiny way.
Yeah.
And that final piece, I think, is the thing that really changed everything. Yeah.
I love it. I love it. And you have done hella amounts of training. I mean, you have your list of qualifications and things that you have done is you really have committed to learning as much as you possibly can. And when I was listening to your podcast, you were talking about Kirtan training. Is that how you pronounce
Kirtan,
it?
yeah.
Can you just tell me what that is, what that looks like, what it's
So
for?
it's essentially chanting. I trained with Nikki Slade, who is a wonderful leader. She used to be a singer prior to doing the more spiritual side of things. So I trained, you may have seen the instrument, the harmonium. I trained in that as well. Yeah. And so for me, I never thought I'd train in it, but chanting, when I first discovered it, particularly in Sanskrit, which is an ancient language connected to like Hinduism, even though Hinduism is really the name that we give those traditions, but
Got ya.
them, yeah. But it's a very ancient language, and yeah, when I first started chanting and hearing chants, my heart just cracked open, and I just couldn't stop crying in the most beautiful sense. And you know, some of it was grief, but it was more than that. It was it like touched something in my heart that felt like home.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, and so I just began doing it for myself as part of a devotional practice. It was the quickest way I could get to what I call like the nectar. And then yeah, I would say to my friend, but Nikki, I said, can you teach me? Can you teach me? I bought myself this instrument, teach me. And she's been an amazing teacher because she was so slow and steady. She's like, I'm working on a training, but it's not ready yet. And years passed. And then eventually she had the training, and I was ready for it. And so I did it, but it was very, very life-changing. And yeah, now in a lot of my group work, I use chanting as a tool to really connect into the heart space. Yeah, I love it.
I love that. That's amazing.
Mm.
When you are receiving all of your inspiration for all of the things that you do, where do you personally feel that is coming from? Is it from you? Is it the spirit world? Is it universe? Is it source? What do you feel like you're connecting into?
I mean, I've got a couple answers to that. The first one is, for me, the sacred God, goddess, whatever we want to call it. For me right now, it feels like I call it like the intelligent pulse of life, which I think everyone is connected to, every living thing is connected to. And so, yeah, while in the past I have been like, you know, I was raised to, you know, look at God and then goddess and then, you know, all of that. I think it's all kind of connected to all the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
But specifically with creations, yeah, I would say that for every single thing that I create, I tend to have like a guide that I'm working with or a group of guides. Yeah. And so, for example, my first book was The Council of Light. The second book was The Magdalens, and so on. Rose Oracle was, well, the Rose Oracle is a different one because it's the individual rose, like the spirits of nature, as well as the symbol of the rose, which is a
Yeah.
symbol of the goddess, the great mother through the ages that has, gone underground or whatever. So yeah, I definitely do connect in with guides, but yeah, but I've kind of got a bit of a funny relationship with like seeing guides as separate as well, because like in my personal life, I don't go, spirit guides, please lead me. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
I do sometimes, but generally I'm just connecting in with that intelligent pulse. But when I create, I definitely am connecting in with a particular frequency of it. So yeah, it's a little bit of both. How about you?
No, well, because for a long time I believed as spirit guides as individuals, which is,
Mm.
but now I think it was actually just the aspect of me that is in spirit.
Right.
So
Yeah.
yeah, so it's that kind of that communicating with, and I needed it to be, because I was so disempowered when I found spirit. I needed it to be
Right.
feel like it was separate. I needed to
Yeah. It's really interesting because, yeah, like I was talking to my friend Kyle the other day. His thing is angels. And he had said to me, he's like, oh my gosh, the angels are appearing as light beings to me now rather than however they did before. I'm not going
yeah,
to speak for him. Um, and I was like, oh my God, that's why I've never publicly spoken about angels, because the way I see what I think are angels has been like light beings. And so I'm like, well, they mustn't be angels. And so I think that it's kind of like with oracle cards or any kind of spiritual tools. Some people can use them for like full on prophecy and kind of like put the power into the object or into the guide or into the whatever.
yeah,
And I think that for me, my path has always been going direct. Um, and then that's kind of made me doubt it sometimes, because I was thinking like I'm not having these like huge experiences of like this external, yeah. Even though when I
absolutely.
do write, it comes in. I can't deny that part of it, but the clairvoyancy of like seeing, yeah. But I'm getting it now, and so it's like, oh my gosh, it's a confidence thing, like actually what I was getting was like so accurate, but I was doubting it because I thought it had to look a certain way, which I think is super common.
Yeah, I think that's part of the problem actually for
Yeah,
most people, is they cut themselves off from spirit because they're
yeah,
expecting an effigy, and when you say it's a
yeah.
vibration, it, it's not tangible enough for our humanness, is
So
it?
true.
So yeah, I love that. That's fascinating to me. Now, as a little aside, who
Mm.
decided to make your oracle cards packs open differently? Because I love it.
The triangle box, you
Yeah,
mean? It was actually my husband.
good
Yeah,
on
he
him.
he he actually works in my business, and he was like, we really need to do a really unique box. And I'm like, great idea. And so we were thinking, or maybe I said a unique box or something. But anyway, it was his idea to how the triangle box would work.
Love
Isn't
it.
it amazing?
I love it. It is so unique and outstanding and just fancy. When you go, oh, when you open it, I love it. I do really love it. Uh, so obviously you're a mother. You talk about being a mother. Your children are gorgeous and cute and on your Instagram, and we can see them all there. They're lovely. How do you balance the demands of motherhood with the prolific nature of the way that you can tap into that creativeness? Do you feel constantly pulled in two directions? Are you very good at managing it? How does that look for you?
Yeah, it's so hard, right?
Yeah,
I don't know. I mean, I'm definitely in the trenches right now in the sense of like my kids are really young.
yeah, you are.
So, and my eldest is almost 4, and like that's getting so much easier. But I've got like my daughter's less than 1. Um, and so yeah, it definitely is getting easier and easier. Like for example, I had an event in New York just last week, and my event before that my daughter had come with me, so did my husband and his mom, like, yeah. And that was really hard because babies. And
Yeah.
so yeah, we made this, like, it I went through like a 6-month process working out how we were going to do that, because I'd booked it way before having her. And in the end, when I took the mum guilt out,
Yeah.
and when I properly, my husband and I connected, because he's very hands-on, and we don't have family nearby here because we live far away, but we've got people who can help us and support us. And yeah, when I took that out of the equation, it was just clear that I should just go. But of course, then I didn't want to be away from her for very long, so I did New York, like, back and forward in like 48 hours basically, which was
Wow.
mental and ridiculous, and I won't do that again. Yeah, I'm just figuring it out.
Yeah.
I think as a sensitive, or both my husband and I are introverted for sure. Our human design is what do you call it? Oh, I'm having a mental blank right now. Projector, which is basically you need time on your own.
Yeah.
So I struggle with that quite a lot, having young kids, because yeah, it's just like needing to be in my own energetic space to refuel. It's just not possible.
It's
So
not.
yeah, yeah. And I think with the work stuff, like I find it a lot harder writing books postpartum, but oracle decks are a lot easier for me,
Mm.
because I think with the book you have, like, it's such a big container that, for me, the way I write as well, it's like living, breathing, sleeping with it and all of that. And it's just not possible with young kids. I don't know when that changes. You'll be able to tell me, I'm sure, but I think it's that
Yeah.
psychic scanning that you have of,
That
I
hasn't
heard it's
stopped
around
yet.
11 or something, or 7 or
I'm still so
yeah.
I've just come back from Texas, funnily enough. I went
Oh,
for
okay.
I did 5 days and just went out there to work. But
Yeah.
I could leave them, and
Yeah.
it was hard leaving them. I felt bad leaving them. My
Yeah.
husband's more than capable, but that is the mum guilt, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
But it was so nice when I was there to be just totally focused on my work and me.
Yeah. Yeah.
I didn't have to think about dinner. If I
Yeah.
wasn't hungry, I didn't need to eat. I didn't have to
Yeah.
worry all the time about other people's needs. And that is really, I think it is really, really hard when you're a mum.
Yeah.
But I think I'm still connected. I'm still trying to tune into them, even when I'm miles away, because you
Yeah.
do, don't you? Maybe that will never end. I'll be constantly psychically stalking them. They'll move out and be going, God, mum, get off me. But yeah, it is a really hard balance. And because it's obvious in everything that you do how passionate about it you are, it must be hard to be in that ebb and flow. I found it very hard when my
Yeah,
kids were.
yeah. But then I think with the on the other side of it, it's like, and I think everyone's got their own unique calling with it all. Like, I've got so many friends who it's just like they're 100% mother. I mean, they don't run their own businesses, so they can, like, with whatever maternity leave they can have, they can have it. I didn't get any maternity leave.
Me neither.
I tried to give myself it, but yeah, it's different setup when you've got your own business, isn't it?
Absolutely.
But
Especially when it's a passion as well, because it's
yeah,
also
that's it.
calling to you.
I know.
It's such an interesting space. And I have a lot of people, the reason I asked you that is because I have a lot of students and people that come to me and say, how do you fit it in?
Mm,
And I always say, don't expect spirit to clear the slate, because they can't. So
mm.
you've got to be selfish
Yeah,
sometimes,
be
and that is hard.
practical. And
Yeah,
yeah, you don't have to get it all achieved in a short window. Yeah.
absolutely, absolutely. So
Yeah.
change of subject here.
Mhm.
Why do you think we come here? What is it you think? Why do you think we incarnate? Just a small question here for you, Rebecca. Why do you feel like we incarnate on Earth? What do you think?
Well, yeah, I mean, I don't know the answer, but I've got some thoughts on it. So I remember one of my teachers explaining that Earth is a school of manifestation. And when I say that, I don't mean like just like law of attraction, kind of more stuff, kind of, I'm talking more like creating, which I guess is law of attraction too, but it's about like I think we, particularly as humans, on this planet, compared to most other living beings, like, we have a voice and we can create things, like whether they're books or homes or whatever it is. So I think that there's something in that.
Yeah.
In the experiences that I've had, like, I had one regression I did where I spoke about in my first book, Light is the New Black, where I went to the moment before my birth and chose family of origin based on, like, my soul's lessons and all of that. But then I was then taken elsewhere, and I was one of many, 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 where I did connect with the Council of Light to receive a collective mission, I guess you'd call it. And so I think that is the thing that I felt since I was young, of like, I've come here for a reason. There's something I'm here to do. I want to do it. Now, I'm not sure if everyone has that or just some people have that. I don't know the answer to that, but I know that I do. And I've met lots of other people who also have it. So, and, I think with that, there is something about incarnating at this time, which I know there's been lots of prophecy and a lot of stuff written about that. Yeah, but I'm not entirely sure what we're doing, but I think that there's something that's happening.
I love it. Yeah, that's pretty much how I feel, to be honest. I can only tell you about my path, but I can also say that although I can't leave it alone, there's the compulsion in it. Whenever I'm talking to spirit and saying, do you want me to do this? Because it's not the easiest of paths we're on, is it?
Oh my God, totally. Especially the work you do. Like,
and they're like, well, do it if you want, don't if you don't. And I'm always like, oh, because you want them to say, you are divinely required to step into your light. And they're like, well, you learn it or you don't learn it, you do it or you don't do it. And I'm like,
yeah, you do want to. Yeah, I love it. Yeah, that when I saw John Holland, he did a mediumship demonstration just this past weekend where we were, and I loved how he would say, and it was almost like he was teaching the audience as well as like saying it for himself, where he was like, I'm in charge of, I guess, the spirits, they're not in charge of me.
yeah.
And I was like, yes, that's such a good teaching.
Yeah.
Because you could easily get into kind of like martyr victim, like, as in like, oh, it's so hard, they're everywhere and all of that. And I think it's so important to just be like, so like in your power with it.
Absolutely. And it is, as you know, it is inescapable. There is the unfolding, we have a choice in it, of course, and what we do with it and how it unfolds, but equally it's calling all the time, isn't it?
Right.
And me doing that hand movement just makes me think of the Rose Oracle and all your work with the rose. So what drew you to the rose?
Well, the beauty, but yeah, it was, I started, I asked myself what lit me up back in 2010, 2011, and what the answer I got was flowers. Hadn't really thought about flowers before, but started to follow that and really connected with the rose and the peony. And then I discovered Queen Mary's Rose Garden in Regent's Park, which is where I would walk every day and meditate. And it was there. I don't know if you've been there, but there's oh, you got to go. It's in the middle of Regent's Park. It's a circular rose garden. There's like 30,000 roses in there. It's amazing. And so that's where I would go, and I'd write for 10 minutes a day. I'd just connect in with whatever that intelligent pulse is. And I'd walk with nature. And, I was clearly connecting with the spirits of nature. Didn't know what the spirits of nature were.
No.
But yeah, and who knows, maybe it was just the voice of my soul, like, doesn't really matter. But I started to receive writing, which I started writing, and it reminded me of like some experiences I had when I was younger. It was almost like hearing poetry. And yeah, that's when I began writing.
I love it. Now you have got your amazing podcast, and I love that because it's a real mix of inspiration and taking space and listening to the intelligent pulse and taking a bit of a break for that. But also you're very candid in sharing your experiences and how you see things. You aren't shying away from it and giving us some sort of sanitized version of you. Tell us about your podcast, how it started.
Yeah, for sure. So it's called Returning with Rebecca Campbell, and it's like, on Spotify and iTunes and all of that. I had received the call to do it for a little while. But as you know, it's not that easy to do a podcast. It is, but it's not straightforward.
Yeah, for sure.
Which, I had no idea about when we began it. But the real reason I wanted to do it is I think in our day and age, particularly with all this short form content that's, amazing, but also just reducing our attention span, and there's no space for nuance and, just so much separation and division and all that. And I had been changing a lot. We always change a lot, right? But I'm not really someone who will just like pull up my camera and just be like, this is what I'm going through right now. I tend to go through it and then I'll write about it. And so I was looking for a way that I could, while I'm changing, which is all the time, be authentic without having the pressure to just be kind of like on social media all the time, if you know what I mean.
Absolutely.
So that's where it began, really. And kind of evolved from there.
Yeah, and you have some interesting topics. I mean, at the moment, you've been, again, anger. I think when we're on a spiritual journey, there's a lot of sanitization of anger, and you shouldn't feel that, and that's a bad subject. And it was really lovely to hear you talking about it as a power, really, as something to sit with and be present for and hold space for. I was like, yeah, when I was listening to it, because we apologize for it, don't we? And
and we stifle it, and then it's our helplessness, our hopelessness, and it turns into like sadness, and if we don't express it.
And you were talking about mystical experiences, and I thought yours were rather unexpected, sitting with people who have passed and feeling the absence of them and classing that as a mystical experience. I'm not trying to spoil your whole podcast. I'm not going to do every episode.
No, you can.
People can listen. But it was just a really powerful way of looking at because you think mystical experiences, like we said, are going to be tangible, bigger. And it was really, I loved it hearing your friends' ones as well.
Well,
So
I think the friendship ending one, that's been really popular, actually. I think a lot of us have been through something like that, where a friendship, a relationship ends, and it's not spoken about, or it's like we're unable to process it. Whereas if it was a romantic relationship, it's a lot easier to kind of, I know it's hard to heal from that. I know it's one of the hardest things we can heal from, but there's so much unspoken around friendships.
absolutely. So what advice would you give to somebody that is right at the beginning, right where you were at the start, when you're hearing that call and you're not sure what it's for or what to do with it? How would you suggest that they start?
So if you've got a call to, I'm assuming you mean like a call of like doing similar type work.
Of opening up to the energy and feeling that inspiration. And
so I think the first thing is like stay in the passion of it. So like try not to figure out every step along the way, and try not to try and like feel like you need to be an expert right at the beginning. Just be in the wonder, be in the passion of it, and act on that every single day. Don't feel like you need to like heal the world or help people. Even just share what's true for you, and your people will come to you. I know what it's like when you begin, particularly if you're like looking to your teachers or mentors, or people that inspire you, just like I remember I spoke about this at the event on the weekend, and I remember being like before my first workshops, I used to write down everything I would say word for word, which I,
Yeah.
of course, could not read out when I'm doing a workshop. And now I do always do a plan, but it goes out the window the moment I kind of let spirit come in.
Yeah.
Um, and so, yeah, just do whatever you need to do to feel grounded and take the little baby steps day after day after day. But don't overthink it. Don't feel like you have to be further along than you actually are.
I love it. Thank you.
Mhm.
What is something that you wish that everybody knew about your work and the stuff that you do?
Oh, I don't know. I'm not sure about what I wish people would know, but I think beauty is really important to me. And I think beauty is very different to perfection. So beauty is like embracing and appreciating and seeking those like aura moments, you know. And I think it's why I love the rose so much. You know, the rose is beautiful in the bud form, like your
Yeah.
card, but it's also beautiful when it releases its petals to the earth.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I love that. That was, see, you can tell the poet in you, because that was a beautiful answer. Okay, and tell us about your mystery school, because that's launching soon, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah. So we've got enrollment for our third class. So I've done it twice before over the past couple of years, and it's year 3 beginning. It's really about well, it's unlocking your intuitive gifts for sure. But yeah, like unlocking ancient wisdom as well, connecting to the intelligent pulse that's woven through all of life. Yeah, it's a 9-month training. It's awesome.
Oh, wow. Sounds incredible. And what about you personally? What's next for you? What are you looking forward to?
Oh, I'm going to Australia for 6 weeks over Christmas. I'm looking forward to that.
To see family?
Yeah, yeah.
I was going to ask you, how did Somerset get a hold of you?
Oh, I have no idea. Think it's the land here. I don't know. We didn't plan to move here, but then I had 2 kids here.
Uh,
I don't know.
it's got its own frequency, that area of the
It
UK.
really does. I
Certainly.
know it's so bizarre because I also have like quite a few people I know who are like trying to move here, and it's a funny place. Like it either just pulls you in or like it's hard to get in. But yeah, so I don't know. It's a mystery. We'll see. I mean, I do think that obviously it's like home of the goddess, or a town that where the goddess is deeply revered. And yeah, I think that I've been doing a lot of like personal healing work since I've been here. I birthed my 2 babies here, like at my home in Glastonbury.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, so I wonder, I'm not sure if that's going to be like a chapter or longer. But all I know is the next destination is unknown if there is one.
Yeah, I love it. When I came to Glastonbury to Dem in May,
Yeah.
I'd never been before. We're trying to pick places for me to Dem that we can visit. And Glastonbury, obviously, it's got that incredible high street with all the spiritual
Yeah,
shops and
yeah.
Star Child and all of that stuff. But it was just for me, the frequency of the place, being a Capricorn, and I'm very masculine in my energy and my approach with business and structure
Yeah,
and getting
yeah,
stuff
love
done,
it.
and you rock up at the venue and they say, how many people have you got coming? And you say 150, and they go, oh, hope we've got enough chairs. And you say,
Stop it.
and
So
you say,
you
but
had it, you were in town hall, were you?
I was in the assembly rooms,
Assembly rooms, got it. Oh
and they
my
were
God.
amazing. But I went, well, you said you had 150 chairs. And they went, yeah, we've lost a few since then. It'll be fine. And
Oh
I
my
had to go, right,
God.
this is a
It's so
different energy.
funny.
Yeah, this is a different place. You have to just be, and let it happen. And then they were like, we've got my friend's coming. And I was like, oh, well, we've sold out. And they were like, yeah, there'll be space for my friends. And I
Oh my
was just
God,
like,
stop it.
and it's just, but I loved it. And it was really good for me to be in that frequency, but I couldn't live in it.
Oh my God. Well, yeah, we don't go into town very often.
So I love it though. It's an amazing, I mean, the energy, it took me a week or so to come back down to earth because it's so
Really?
heightened. Yeah, I was like,
Oh,
so loved it. Thank you so
my
much for talking
pleasure.
to
So
us.
nice to meet you.
It's been lovely to meet you. Obviously, I will put a link to your website in the show notes so everybody can go check you out. But I think most people have got your books and heard of you and got your cards anyway. So it's been lovely to talk to you.
And pop it through the team and we'll share it as well.
Oh, amazing. Thank you so much.
See ya.
Bye.